Yeah, listener. What got me in the combat sports scene? So it's funny how life takes us on a journey, right? Like, and I believe that martial arts are a metaphor for life. I started wrestling. It would have been in the first grade. I was going to a prep school back east called Brunswick, and they wanted to introduce all their young kids to every sport. And wrestling was back then. It was about a 2 week season, right? Like where you'd have a tournament, and I was hooked, right? Immediately, I knew that that was what I wanted to do. I stayed there through junior high, and I wrestled through junior high, and then we moved to California. And contemporaneously to that, I found my love for combat sports. I started karate at about age 11. So I've always been sort of a mixed martial artist, if you will, in one way or the other. I trained karate all the way until I was 25. I got my black belt in England. There was some boxing in between there, and eventually, of course, kickboxing. Right, like as soon as a kickboxing teacher or a supposed teacher entered my neighborhood, I left karate behind. Like no contact wasn't my thing. Contact was my thing, and I went to the class and I was able to use all the stuff I learned in karate, kicking people in the head. So I love this, and I embarked on a short kickboxing career that was very informative. And so martial arts have always been with me, even during my times in prison. It was training, strength and conditioning, which is a part of combat sports, right? A definite part of it. I know some people just spar, and I know I did that when I was younger. I ran a little bit because that's all we knew. As far as the fight game itself, I mean, boxing was the only combat sport of any renown. So when I was very young, during this time when I was training wrestling, training karate, I was also simultaneously reading boxing magazines, right? It took a really long time for me to get to a boxing gym because boxing was not a sport that was offered to the middle classes. Like now, there's boxercise everywhere, real boxing gyms everywhere. It wasn't like that back then, right? Like you couldn't find a place to train. I was in San Diego for the at least the teen version of that, and I kept looking for Spud Murph's boxing gym, which is kind of a renowned San Diego gym, but it kept opening and closing, right? Like gyms didn't really stay open back then. So my combat sports background is a mush of all of that together, right? Karate, kickboxing, wrestling, boxing, and it's just it became one when MMA became a sport. At first, it wasn't really. I did a lot of street fighting too. You'll read that in my book, Warrior of the Light. But also, the UFC wasn't a martial artist's place in the beginning. In the beginning, it was a tough guy's place. Now, obviously, it's a sport, right? Like, it's so much a sport that they don't even make contact when they spar each other, which I find absolutely hilarious. But listen, I'm an old dog, and I have to realize that some of those things are out. You can't do that anymore. But yeah, man, combat sports have been a part of my life for this entire journey, and I think they're a metaphor for life, right? Like, I was a great striker, but then when I tried to do jiu-jitsu, I was horrible. And that's anything in life you try, you're new at, right? Like, hey, you got to relearn, and certain things you learned before will work against you. And how is that any different than a job or school or anywhere you go? You've got to relearn things constantly, new people, new places. And that's what the martial arts are. That's why they're so good for life. That's why people endeavor to get those black belts, because it shows your continuity on the journey towards success, and that's what I believe they are. And one day in the next 10 years, I'll be a jiu-jitsu black belt. I guarantee it. Everybody, like and follow for more on the Fight Game.